18 months before he proposed, Taylor Swift showed Travis Kelce the jewelry she had chosen for her engagement ring. He was paying attention. Taylor Swift's engagement ring was expertly chosen by Travis Kelce. The pop artist, 35, talked candidly about her engagement to Kelce, 35, and the amount of work the football player put into creating her sparkler during an appearance on the UK radio program Heart Breakfast on Friday, October 3rd. Swift revealed of Kelce, he designed it with his fantastic jeweler, Kindred Lubeck, after hosts Emma Bunton and Jamie Theakston congratulated her on the engagement and invited her to view the ring. She engraves all of her gold by hand. He was simply paying attention to everything, as it turns out, because I gasped when I saw the ring in the movie I showed him about a year and a half ago. I just thought her stuff was so cool. In addition to saying, "Listen to me," I said, "I know who made this." It seemed like you knew me well. She said, "I wasn't sure what I would want, but he did somehow, and that's kind of flex." The Opalite singer also talked about how her wonderful relationship with Kelce inspired her to write her new 12-track album, The Life of Showgirl, and how her loved ones have watched her grow more like herself since they first started dating. Early in my career, I kind of harbored the idea that I wouldn't be able to write if I wasn't genuinely sad in my personal life. And I believe that's a contributing factor to my deep appreciation for this music. Everyone in my life is like, "You've never been so you-self," Swift remarked. "I do believe that there is someone in your life who drives you, who makes you more you," Swift stated. "We were capturing lightning in a bottle every time we were composing songs for this record. When this person entered my life, everyone said, 'You've never been so you,' and I think it shows in music," she continued. On August 26, Swift and Kelce shared pictures from a flower-filled proposal on Instagram to announce their engagement. The caption read, "Your gym teacher and your English teacher are getting married firecracker." The musician's much-awaited 12th studio album was released at the same time as her appearance on Heart Breakfast. There are many lyrical allusions to her future spouse throughout the album, such as in the songs of Fate of Ophelia and Opalite, which allude to Kelce's birthstone of October and which she has stated is the NFL star's favorite. In another segment of the interview, 49-year-old Spice Girl Bunton questioned Swift about her preparations for her bachelorette party, which is known as a hen do in the UK. Swift said that she hasn't. Regarding her friends, she remarked, "The trouble is that everyone is dispersed over the world. You may assume that I would have been preoccupied with the concept of getting married my whole life, but in reality, I never gave it any attention until I met the person. As a result, I haven't even considered having a hen party or anything like. I've never given it any thought until now. Despite being so busy, my girlfriends are a lot of fun." In the end, when the story of Taylor Swift's engagement to Travis Kelce is looked back upon, it will never simply be remembered as a celebrity love story splashed across magazine covers or shared through millions of social media posts. It will be remembered as a moment that blurred the line between pop culture and private intimacy, a moment that revealed how carefully the details of life can be stitched together when two people are truly paying attention to one another. The ring that Kelce designed, with its subtle yet profound references to Swift's tastes, her artistic sensibilities, and even her passing comments from a year and a half earlier, was more than an ornament. It was a statement of listening, of absorbing, of truly seeing someone beyond the gloss of their fame. For a woman who has spent her entire adult life being watched, dissected, misread, and sometimes misrepresented, to be genuinely seen is perhaps the greatest gift of all. That is why the ring is not just a sparkler or a status symbol. It is a culmination of an understanding, a flex, yes, but also an act of emotional precision. In Swift's telling, it is the proof that Kelce was watching, learning, memorizing her likes and her fascinations, even when she did not imagine he would. But the ring is only one layer of what this engagement represents. At 35, Taylor Swift has lived an artistic life so thoroughly intertwined with her personal life that every romance, every heartbreak, and every quiet phase of solitude has been recorded in melodies, lyrics, and verses that fans recite like scripture. She herself admitted once believing that her creativity depended on sadness, on heartbreak, on longing unfulfilled. The irony of her career is that millions came to her music not just to celebrate her successes, but to mourn with her, to feel through her the sting of lost love, the confusion of betrayal, the bittersweet acceptance of what cannot last. But now, in this engagement, she frames a different truth. That joy can be just as generative as grief. That stability can produce as much inspiration as volatility. The album born from this relationship, The Life of a Showgirl, is not merely another entry in her discography. It is a document of transformation. It stands as proof that Swift has crossed into a new phase of her artistry, where the muse is not pain but presence, not loss but love, not fracture but wholeness. That is no small shift for a songwriter of her caliber, whose audience is conditioned to expect tales of turmoil and catharsis. Instead, she is teaching them to embrace a narrative of flourishing, of becoming more oneself through the reflection of another. This is why her comments about being more herself in this relationship carry such weight. When she notes that those closest to her remark on her newfound authenticity, it is not a cliché observation about being in love. It is a cultural signal about the evolution of an artist in real time. Swift has always carried a dual burden: to be the most famous woman in music, and yet also to embody the intimate confidant for millions of listeners. She has played the role of the diarist, whose words are raw enough to feel like secrets whispered in a friend's bedroom. To be more herself in this moment means that the balance between public performance and private identity has shifted. She has no longer calibrated her expression only to manage perception, but allowing her actual joy to lead the art. This is a rarity in modern celebrity life, where every move is calculated against a potential backlash of millions of opinions. In choosing to share her love, her proposal, her ring, and even the playful caption about their professions, she has taken control of the narrative in the most Swiftian way, by folding it into art and inviting her fans to witness her growth. What deepens the resonance of this engagement is the way it intertwines two cultural worlds that rarely meet on equal footing. Travis Kelce is not only a football star, he is a figure in a sport whose audience demographic has often seemed distant from the pop-centric, largely female audience that constitutes the backbone of Swift's fan base. Their relationship, chronicled in glimpses from stadium visits, paparazzi photos, and social media moments, has already shifted the cultural landscape, bringing new eyes to the NFL and bringing sports fans into contact with the narratives of pop music. Their engagement crystallizes that merger. In the flower-strewn photos, in the caption joking about gym teachers and English teachers, in the details of an October birthstone woven into a song title, one sees the merging of American archetypes: the athlete and the artist, the field and the stage, the masculine and the feminine reimagined in partnership. For fans, it is a fairy tale but also a cultural metaphor. It suggests that the silos of entertainment are dissolving, that love stories can act as bridges between worlds that rarely intersect. It also points to the possibility that authenticity, when broadcast at this scale, can transcend even the most skeptical of audiences. And yet, what makes this moment extraordinary is not just its symbolism, but its humanity. The way Swift speaks of not having imagined her bachelorette party, of her friends scattered across the world, of never having thought much about marriage until the right person appeared, reflects a groundedness that contrasts with the spectacle of her career. These are not rehearsed talking points, but real glimpses into a life that has often been consumed by work, ambition, and the relentless pace of touring. It humanizes her in a way that her fans crave, because they have followed her since she was a teenager writing songs about crushes in high school hallways. To see her at 35 reflect on the ordinariness of suddenly caring about a hen party because she is engaged makes her both timeless and relatable. It closes the gap between the pop star and the person, reminding the public that behind every global headline is still the small discoveries of an individual navigating adulthood. If one zooms out, the engagement also offers a commentary on how celebrity relationships are consumed in the 21st century. Gone are the days when such events would be revealed in controlled press releases or carefully staged magazine exclusives. Swift and Kelce chose Instagram, chose casual humor, chose flowers and candid joy. This is the logic of the digital era, to allow the story to unfold where fans already live, where immediacy matters more than polish, where the intimacy of the platform mimics the intimacy of the announcement itself. The effect is that fans felt not as though they were being marketed to, but as though they were invited to witness a chapter in real time. In this sense, Swift once again shows her mastery of audience connection. She understands that the line between artist and audience is porous, That part of her power lies in collapsing that distance without ever fully dissolving it. By inviting her followers into her engagement in this way, she turned a personal milestone into a collective celebration, one that reinforced her bond with millions who feel as though they are on the journey with her. The longer view, however, reveals that this engagement is not merely about two individuals, but about what their story represents in the cultural imagination. It is about resilience, Swift's after years of scrutiny, criticism, and invasions of privacy. It is about reinvention, how she has continually shifted her narrative from heartbreak ballads to feminist anthems to now songs of joy. It is about representation, of love not as a fairy tale detached from reality, but as something built on attentiveness, memory, listening, and growth. Kelce's attention to her passing admiration of a jeweler may seem like a small detail, but in Swift's framing, it becomes emblematic of the kind of partnership that nurtures rather than diminishes, that celebrates individuality while creating union. In a culture where celebrity romances are often consumed as spectacle and discarded as gossip, there's invites a different perspective. That even under the harshest spotlight, love can thrive when rooted in something as simple as paying attention. And so the conclusion to this story, at least in its present chapter, is not a closing at all, but an opening. The engagement is not the culmination of Swift's romantic narrative, but the launching point for a new artistic and personal epic. It is the proof that a pop star whose life has been turned into headlines, memes, and think pieces for nearly 2 decades can still surprise, still inspire, still redefine herself before the eyes of the world. It is the proof that love, when genuine, can seep into music, the public persona, the everyday anecdotes, and transform them all into something more luminous. And perhaps most importantly, it is a reminder to her audience, millions of whom are navigating their own search for love, identity, and meaning, that joy is not antithetical to depth, that happiness can be just as profound as heartbreak, and that sometimes the most extraordinary thing one can do is to pay attention. What becomes especially striking when reflecting on this engagement is how much it speaks to the evolution of Taylor Swift, not only as an artist, but as a person negotiating the long arc of public life. For nearly 2 decades, she has been the subject of countless narratives written about her, some adoring, some critical, many contradictory. Every relationship, every album, every public appearance has been scrutinized to such a degree that one might reasonably expect fatigue, cynicism, or retreat. And yet, what we see in this moment is not withdrawal but expansion. She is not diminished by the weight of attention. Instead, she is rechanneling it. The woman who once confessed to fearing that her writing depended upon heartbreak now stands as living proof that love, when deeply rooted and sincerely experienced, can be just as catalytic. That shift is not merely personal, it is cultural. It suggests to her listeners, many of whom have grown alongside her from adolescence into adulthood, that creativity does not need to emerge only from suffering. There is room for music born of fulfillment, of growth, of a stable kind of happiness that resonates differently, but no less powerfully. This matters because, in a broader sense, Swift has become a generational narrator. Her songs have often mapped directly onto the life stages of her fans. The teenage crushes, the early heartbreaks, the betrayals, the reinventions, the confrontations with self-worth. Each album has acted almost as a collective diary, allowing fans to locate themselves in her words. Now, as she writes from a place of partnership and commitment, she carries her audience into another phase of life. The announcement of her engagement is not only her personal milestone, but also a cultural signpost. The Dyers of a generation is writing new chapters about stability, about love as a sustaining force, about what it means to find oneself mirrored in another. For fans who have followed her since they were 13, this is not simply Taylor Swift's story. It is their story, too, refracted through her words, her choices, her public journey. The proposal, the ring, the album, all become symbols of a wider experience, where personal growth intersects with collective identification. Yet one cannot ignore the layered symbolism of how this engagement unfolded. Consider again the details Swift emphasized, that Kelce remembered her admiration for a particular jeweler's artistry a year and a half prior. On its surface, this is a charming anecdote, but it also reveals something profound about what it means to be seen in an age of performance. For years, Swift has been subjected to an external gaze. Fans parsing Easter eggs, tabloids chasing stories, critics questioning motives. To be seen, truly seen, not by millions, but by one person who listens closely enough to recall a passing comment, carries a resonance far beyond romance. It is an antidote to the objectification of celebrity. It is a grounding of identity in a relationship where one is not a spectacle but a partner. This is a quiet revolution of her engagement, that in the midst of the loudest stage on earth, she has found someone whose attention is so attuned that it renders the noise irrelevant. And in sharing that detail publicly, she also models for her listeners what healthy partnership looks like. Not grandiose gestures detached from reality, but thoughtful acts of remembrance that confirm presence, attention, and intimacy. The cultural response to their announcement further illustrates how powerful their narrative has become. Social media erupted not only with congratulations, but with essays from fans about how meaningful it felt to see Swift embrace in a way that did not appear performative, to see her joy shine through without the shadow of scandal or skepticism. The NFL audience, meanwhile, found itself intersected with pop culture in unexpected ways, as news of the engagement trended across sports media and entertainment outlets alike. The Swift effect, already demonstrated by her influence on NFL viewership and even merchandise sales, found another expression here. Love stories, when authentic, transcend the boundaries of audience demographics. For once, the cultural narrative was not about rivalry or division, but about shared celebration. It was proof that in an era of fractured media consumption, some stories can still unite disparate groups through a common sense of delight. What deepens this moment even more is how it coincides with the release of her 12th studio album. It would be one thing if the engagement were an isolated event, but paired with the unveiling of the life of a showgirl, it becomes clear that Swift has orchestrated not only her personal narrative, but also her artistic one in tandem. The album itself, with tracks like The Fate of Ophelia and Opalite, threads their relationship into its very DNA. This is not accidental. Swift has long been a master of narrative control, of embedding her personal life into her music in ways that reward attentive listeners. But this time, the message is not coded heartbreak or veiled critique. It is direct celebration. By aligning her engagement announcement with the release of an album suffused with references to her fiancé, she collapses the boundary between life and art in a way that feels natural rather than contrived. The two are inextricable. Her joy is her art is her joy. And sharing them together, she invites the world not just to witness, but to participate in her transformation. For cultural commentators, this presents a fascinating shift in Swift's trajectory. Her career has been defined by reinvention. From country ingenue to pop titan, from confessional songwriter to political voice, from heartbreak narrator to global icon, each phase has been marked by deliberate choices about how to present her identity and how to navigate the interplay of art and publicity. The engagement of Kelce suggests the emergence of yet another era, one defined not by reclaiming narratives from critics or by battling for control over her image, but by allowing her personal fulfillment to take center stage. It is a risk, because happiness does not always sell as easily as heartbreak. And yet, if anyone can redefine what resonates on a mass scale, it is Taylor Swift. By choosing to anchor her latest work in joy, she not only rewrites her own story, but potentially shifts the expectations of an entire industry about what kinds of narratives audiences crave. Of course, no conclusion about this engagement will be complete without acknowledging the historical weight of Swift's public relationships. From her earliest days in the spotlight, she was often defined through the lens of who she dated, subjected to caricatures of a serial dater, a heartbreaker, a woman weaponizing romance for songs. Those reductive portrayals, often tinged with sexism, overshadow the complexity of her artistry and the sincerity of her experiences. In light of that history, the engagement carries a redemptive quality. It resists the trivialization that once dogged her name, and instead reclaims a narrative of romance as something she defines on her own terms. By speaking openly about the authenticity of her connection with Kelce, about the ways he listens, the ways he supports, she subverts years of stereotypes. She shows that love in her life is not a gimmick or a headline factory, but profound reality. In this sense, the engagement is not only a personal victory, but a cultural correction, a reframing of how we understand women's narratives in the public eye. As for what comes next, the possibilities are as vast as Swift's imagination. The wedding itself will inevitably be a global event, though whether she chooses to share it widely or guard its intimacy remains to be seen. Her music will likely continue to evolve in ways that reflect the stability and growth she has found. Her fans will continue to interpret, to celebrate, to analyze, because that is the nature of parasocial intimacy. But beyond the specifics, the enduring takeaway from this engagement is what it symbolizes about attention, about care, about joy as a creative force. It affirms that even in a world where everything feels commodified, there are still spaces for sincerity. It reminds us that love stories can be more than tabloid fodder. They can be cultural texts that speak to the longing, the hopes, and the transformations of millions who see themselves in them. In reflecting on this moment, one cannot help but recognize the poetic symmetry of it all. The young woman who once wrote songs about unrequited love and fairy tale dreams is now living a reality that embodies both romance and maturity. The artist who once questioned her ability to write without sadness has produced a body of work illuminated by joy. The celebrity who once felt scrutinized to the point of distortion has found someone who notices her not as an icon, but as a person, someone who remembers what she admires, someone who listens. That is the ultimate conclusion to draw from Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's engagement. That attention is love. That joy is artistry. That being seen is the most profound validation of all. And for her fans, for the culture, and for the history of pop music itself, that conclusion is not just Taylor Swift's. It is a reminder for us all